Serious people who were friends or knew someone who turned out to be a cold-blooded killer. How did you react when you found out? A kid I grew up with murdered his entire family. Aside from his older brother who had already moved out, he had been caught filming his sister showering and then killed his mother, father, little brother and the sister he was filming. I'm from a small town, so it shook the community pretty heavily. He was a nice kid, so it left a lot of us dumbfounded. The surviving brother still visits him in prison to this day. Sad story all the way around. I went to high school with a guy who killed his girlfriend's son. I guess the kid was too slow going up the stairs and he punched him and kicked him. The boy died from internal bleeding in the night. I went to high school with a guy who beat his girlfriend with a pipe, and then beat/stomped her new puppy to death. The girl was from our high school as well. It was crazy. The girl survived, and ended up going to the police to report him. After he was arrested, though, she started posting all over Facebook about how she couldn't wait for him to be released, and she couldn't wait to marry him. I couldn't believe it. I went to college with a guy who was friendly and funny when he was sober. Always polite and easy to converse with on most any topic. Well liked by guys and fancied by many girls. When he was drunk, different story. He would get this dead behind the eyes look and seek out fights. Not stupid bar room brawls but extremely violent encounters where he would get people on the ground and try to stomp their head in. My friends and I avoided him. He tried starting fights with many of us, and we all said that he was going to kill someone someday. Well, that happened in 2007 when he took a girl back to his apartment after a baseball game. She apparently didn't do what he wanted and he beat, choked and stabbed her. I was shocked when I heard but not surprised, if that makes sense. He's currently in jail serving a 35-year sentence. I did drugs a couple times a long time ago with a guy. He had a roommate. The guy decapitated the roommate with a saw while he was still alive, because he thought the roommate was sleeping with his wife. The kicker? The roommate and the wife were siblings. They only ever found the head. I worked with a guy that killed his family. He moved to our state from a state pretty far away. He seemed to be a nice guy. I sat next to him for well over a year. He had pictures of his kids at his desk and would talk your ear off about many subjects but would get weird and vague if you asked about his family. One day he just doesn't come into work. He never returned. Boss and coworkers have no idea where he went. He left all of his personal belongings at work. Then we see on the news that he was arrested for murder. He had several kids with his ex-wife and she was looking to get child support out of him. He had remarried and didn't want to pay, so he killed her and his kids that he had with her and fled the state. He had managed to avoid the law for that year but then stupidly decided to try to get a new license in our state with his real name. He was found pretty quickly after that. My mom lived next door to a guy who ended up killing a little girl and hiding her under his floorboards. She said that as a kid he was always a creepy guy and he would do and say odd things. She wasn't that surprised to hear he was arrested for murder. My grandparents lived next door to his dad for many years after his son was charged and jailed for the crime, and they always felt bad for him. But the family was quite poor and, for lack of a better phrase, they were dragged up rather than brought up. The murder was of a 9-year-old girl who had gone missing and the whole region were searching for her. He apparently knew the family. He'd taken the girl, sexually assaulted her and ended up killing her. Panicked and hid her body under the floorboards. The girl was from a rough family too, and social services ended up involved with her mother who had several kids. My mom always felt uncomfortable around her neighbor. She was friends with his sister too, and the kids on her street used to hang together a lot, but he was always the outsider. The most annoying thing is he only got 23 years for the murder and he's due for parole in 2023. I actually sort of have a story for this. The speech therapist I used to see as a child turned out to be the prime suspect in a murder case. Nothing has been proven but all evidence points to him. I was seeing him in 2004 and apparently this took place in 2001 or 2002. His ex-girlfriend broke up with him and was seeing another guy. St, being the jealous type, kept tabs on their relationship and often followed them out to places to abuse them. AG was also a creature of routine, so St had his schedule under control too. AG would take the bins out and go for a walk at a specific time every Tuesday night. One Tuesday night, Street turns up, stabs him repeatedly, then runs him over in AG's car, I guess to leave the body in a state so that it looked like an accident as opposed to a stabbing. When I found out, I wasn't really surprised. He always seemed a little off, and would do strange things like make dinner reservations during our sessions. He definitely had an aggressive side which was a bit scary for 7 Yomi. I just can't believe this guy was dealing with young kids like that. Just makes me really uneasy. Edit, typo/clarity. I work at a gas station. I used to work at a location by a bunch of hotels, and I worked mornings Monday through Friday, so I had plenty of regulars who pretty much felt like friends. There were 2 maintenance guys for one of the hotels nearby that would come in every day for drinks. One of them, my favorite of the 2, was Hispanic, and he helped me practice my Spanish when he came in. He was so nice and fun to be around, and it always brightened my day when he came in. One day I was looking at Facebook and I saw a news article that there was an incident at the hotel he worked at. Someone had committed suicide by cop when he busted out of a hotel room closet with a gun. Because he was running after shooting his wife and her best friend. Because he found out she was cheating. Broke my fucking heart. It literally felt like I had lost a loved one. And I was so torn about how to feel because I missed him and was sad that he was gone, but I was never sure that it was okay to feel because he was a murderer. The other maintenance guy stopped coming in after that. I think he quit his job at the hotel. I tried messaging him on Facebook to see how he was holding up, but I never got a response. It's probably really unlikely, but if you're reading this, I know you miss Pablo. I do too. I hope you're doing okay now. I actually have 2 stories for this one. My mother works as a records clerk for the sheriff's department, where she lives. Next door to her office is the county jail, where inmates either awaiting trial or on short sentences for non-violent crimes sit. Every couple days a group of inmates with a proven record of good behavior comes to mom's office to do janitorial work. Most of them are guys in for back child support. For the entirety of my childhood I knew one of those inmates. He was the nicest guy. Got along with the staff. The officers, it was easy to forget he was an inmate. Turns out it's because he was a former cop. Came home one night and caught his wife in bed with another guy. Took them outside. Shot them and turned himself in. I couldn't believe it the first time I'd heard the story. Nicest guy I'd ever met, killed 2 people. Still not sure why they let him stay at the jail instead of sending him to prison somewhere. But there he stayed and he worked every day till they released him. Second story is less involved. My first day of basic training, we were sitting in reception and the drill sergeant asks us if there are any legal issues that would prevent us from completing training. One of the guys who rode the bus down to Fort Jackson with me sticks up his hand. Yeah, there's 2 dead bodies in the trunk of my car at home. DS takes down his info and leaves to make a call. Hour or so later 2 MPs show up, throw the guy in cuffs and walk him away. Never saw him again. My brother was friends with someone who falls in this category. We'll call him V. Nothing ever stood out of the ordinary with V. Just a normal charismatic guy. One night my brother was at a party with his friends drinking. It was late at night, like around midnight. He received a call from V. He was asking my brother for a ride somewhere. My brother was drunk, so he said he couldn't do it. The next day, we heard the bad news. V had brutally beaten his mother with an iron pipe and tried to make a run for it. It wasn't long until he was found and arrested for murder. We still have no idea why he did it either. If my brother had not got drunk that night, he could have been involved in something he had no idea about. I went to school with someone who later in his life had a man killed because he wanted to hook up with the man's wife. He paid some lowlifes $10K, who then went to the man's house, dragged him outside, tied him up and slit his throat in front of the wife. Then he played shoulder to cry on for the wife. And they actually hooked up a couple of months later. He only got caught because he stupidly boasted about it in a pub. The police suspected that wifey was in on it too, but they could never prove it. When I heard it on the news, I was shocked but also not really surprised. Something was always a bit off about him. He wasn't too bright, had a mean streak and was spoiled rotten. It's crazy to me I actually have an answer for this. A family member dated and almost married a girl that killed a man with her ex. She did this previously to meeting my family. I didn't know this bit of information until months of knowing her. Before I knew this, she stayed with me frequently and legitimately seemed very nice. I couldn't process it. I felt sick. I ended up Googling her and found the whole story, which was way worse than I could have imagined. I cried and felt insane. It made me feel gross. She helped us decorate our Christmas tree and then days later I found out. I don't know how to describe the feeling. It's just weird. I went to school with a chick who ended up raping, beating, and killing an 8-year-old girl. Then she stuffed the child's body in a suitcase and dumped it near water. It wasn't something I would have expected from her when I knew her. She was always so friendly and nice. One of my best friends even dated her at one point and he was just as shocked as I was when we saw her in the news. Anyway, she's a piece of shit now. I'd kill her if I was allowed to. Oddly enough, I actually know 5 murderers. Damn. Reading that skeeves me out. The one I knew best grew up around the corner from me. He was a few years younger than me, but the same age as my brother, so we played together fairly often. In 1996, he murdered his girlfriend with a shotgun. Apparently he went to her house, she lived with her parents, and shot her to death while she was in the bathtub. He claimed they had a murder/suicide pact, but if they did, he certainly failed on his end of the bargain. I was surprised, but then again not really. He was a strange kid, but I never envisioned him a murderer. The second one was a guy I grew up with that stabbed a kid at a pool hall when we were all in high school, 1991 or 1992. The kid died, and my friend pled guilty to manslaughter. Not sure that this was really cold-blooded. I can't find any articles to link though. This one did really surprise me, because I genuinely liked the guy. Back then, I was a kid myself, so it was crazy to me that one of my peers could have killed someone. He's been in and out of trouble since then, mostly petty/traffic stuff. But we are Facebook friends. The third was a kid my brother used to play Little League with. In 1998 or 1999, he and some other guys apparently beat a man, I believe the man was homeless, to death with a garbage can. That one surprised me a lot because he was a really quiet kid. I do remember him being super lazy on the ball field. My dad, who coached, would always stick him in the outfield because all he did was play with the grass, etc. I can't find an article to link, but I did find the case in the court records. The fourth was a former roommate of my brother's. I only met him a couple of times, but he was really a nice guy. My brother swears that he must have been in the wrong place at the wrong time, caught up with the wrong people doing the wrong thing, because apparently Tim wouldn't hurt a fly. He and 2 others were charged with second-degree murder for beating a fisherman to death. Finally, a guy that my brother knew in high school beat a girl to death with a rock. Apparently they had dated years ago and reconnected, and she flew back here to see him. He dumped her in the bay behind his house, and when the sheriff showed up to search the house after her body was found, he shot himself in his yard. I only knew the guy by name, but it was still a surprise just because of how violent the killing had been. That's enough cold-blooded killers for one lifetime. Thank you very much. There was a gang in my city where to become a full member you had to shoot someone from a rival gang. Shoot, not necessary kill. Anyway, a kid who I went to school with was always trying to be the cool hard man and often got called out on his bullshit. So in the last year of school he joined this gang, and ended up killing 2 people and fleeing the country. Now this took place in the UK where gun crime isn't unheard of but rather a lot less common, so it ended up being on Crime Watch. Last I heard he's still on the run. This is going to sound messed up, but I know at least 2 unrelated murderers. One was a school shooter at my college and the other was a woman who was in charge of a community garden I was part of. I'm 46 years old and have a pretty vanilla life. I wonder if, by a certain age, there's just a probability of one knowing a murderer. Kind of like having 2 friends with the same birthday. Anyway, I was horribly dismayed at the school shooter. It made my college feel unsafe. Plus I knew the 2 people he killed, so I was also terribly saddened. The community garden organizer killed her step-grandson who was 2. I felt more shock and repulsion at that. Not friends with per se. But when Halo 3 came out, me and my good buddy had a group of friends we had met in matchmaking that we ended up playing with for about a year or 2. Maybe just about 5 or 6 of us. You know, the kind of people who are just sensible, fun to talk to, and are also good at the game. Anyway, one of the guys was particularly quiet, but nothing really struck me as odd. Of our group, I probably played with him the least. I guess towards the end, my buddy who played with him a lot more often said that he would complain about his family and stuff, and just would say weird things. One week, he kinda fell off the face of the earth. I think maybe a week or 2 later, one of the guys in our group said, "Guys, did you hear about Marshall?" And I was like, "No." Apparently this guy killed both his parents. In retrospect, my buddy was like, all the weird stuff he would say sort of makes sense now, but you would have never considered it threatening. It just sounded like any young kid complaining about his parents. I felt for years that my brother, who is 10 months younger than me, would end up killing someone. He just absolutely doesn't care about other people and had been in and out of jail for violent offenses all his adult life. In 2011 he had a fight with his friend and beat him over the head with a tire iron in his own house because he was imposing there and the friend told him he should leave. He only served 8 months in jail for this because of legal bullshit that blamed the hospital for not saving the guy's life. Manslaughter with intent. He has bragged ever since about getting away with murder. I hate him and avoid him and my family as much as possible. Get most info about them off Facebook. I honestly wasn't surprised at all. I just hoped that he would go to jail and not be let out this time. He is currently in jail now for punching his 8-week-old baby. The baby is okay and the mother takes her to visit him in jail. Yes, I have called CPS several times. Jesus, I'm so sorry to hear this. I can somewhat relate. My brother is mentally ill, was implicated in the disappearance of a classmate during high school, and was caught several times plotting murder on both a single and mass scale. He's also tried to stab me and other members of my family several times, and showed up to Christmas last year with a gun he's not legally allowed to own, with exactly 5 bullets in it, 1 for each family member plus himself. I have PTSD from our life growing up together and have had to have serious conversations with my therapist about what I'm going to do when he kills our parents and younger sister. I used to have a suicide plan in the case that this happened, but my therapist has convinced me that I'm better off gathering evidence to show how the system failed and pressing for change when he snaps. Worst case scenario, he kills our mom and then blows up a mall at Christmas. Mom has done everything for him, basically killed herself to get him the best doctors, and I don't want her to be criticized by TV personalities for something she tried so hard to prevent. He has also had a steady girlfriend for the last 2 years. How he manages it I don't know. Previous girlfriends were also mentally ill, but this one seems to be okay. My fear at him becoming a father is huge. I can't imagine what you're going through living in those circumstances. I know I felt so incredibly powerless when CPS wouldn't protect my sister from him. I hope you get a better response. I used to date someone who was friends with a guy named Dave. He always seemed like a nice guy. Never felt uncomfortable around him. Dave was in his early 20s and moves to Vegas. One day a news video pops up on Facebook and it's his picture in the thumbnail. He went to a hotel in Vegas and raped, strangled and beat an elderly woman who cleans the rooms. She survived. In the video has seen looking up at the security camera and what looks like flashing gang signs as he walks past. I just tried searching for the video on YouTube but I couldn't find it. It's been a couple years now since it happened. I think he got 30 to 40 years or something like that. I was completely shocked. My parents had close friends, M and J, who were almost like family to us. We always spent time with them. We'd gone on vacation with them. They were a big part of my childhood. When I was a teen, they split up. He liked his blue collar, laid back life. She was moving up the corporate ladder and wanted her life to reflect it. There were no hard feelings. They just grew into different people. It rocked the whole circle of friends, because this was the first couple to divorce. Jay, the wife, stayed in town, while M moved away to follow work. A few years later, the cops come around asking questions of Jay and eventually my parents and their friends. Turns out M had been arrested for murder. His DNA matched 2 unsolved cases within 100 miles of our hometown. Those occurred during his marriage to Jay and his close friendship with my family. No one could believe it. He confessed to all 3 murders, all young women. It turns out that he had kept one of the bodies in their garage for a few days at some point. His ex-wife went off the rails for a while. She lost her job. She didn't leave her house for months, and then very rarely for years. She's starting to come back into the fold of her friends now. This was years ago and I still can't really come to terms with it. We never mention him in my family at all.